All right. I got somebody with the last four digits of their phone number. 2269. Who am I talking to?
Mitch, Nicholas tomorrow.
Good.
How are you?
Hey, how are you doing, man?
Hey, buddy, how you doing? Hanging in there?
I'm doing great, man. How you been doing? Long time. Haven't heard from you in a while. That's great to hear your voice.
Yeah, no, it's been a while. I'm good. Likewise. Usually, the Tuesday nights is a little bit of a conflict for me, but hope I can start joining in on with you guys on whenever I can. So, I do have a couple questions. My first question I wanted to ask you is regarding hypothecation and how the COVID, how you think that's going to affect hypothecation at the moving forward as we get through this pandemic, or with just the market in general, and if you think if hypothecation is going to be more difficult or easier as a result of where we're at right now.
Well, I don't think the pandemic helped anybody getting a loan. I think all the banks were kind of taking a look at what they're doing. I know some people, I heard a few people say they had some hypothecation conversations started, but they got quelled during COVID. But I think that's just the banks wanting to sit and see how bad everything is first. But, you can do hypothecation with private people. You can loan on your notes to private people. I do it all the time. So if the banks don't want to do it,
let's talk about that. Let's talk about that for a second. Then is that, given where we are now, and there's most of that private money come from retirement type accounts. I'm assuming.
Yeah, so let me just back up. Let me back up so everyone on the call can catch up with us in case they don't know. Hypothecation is a very fancy word for saying you're going to pledge your real estate lien note as collateral. Let me just go from the beginning. You buy a house, you sell or finance it to Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith owes you $90,000 over the next 30 years. You have a real estate lien note for $90,000, and you got a first lien on that house as collateral. And so what Nick's talking about is going to the community bank and saying, hey, how much will you loan me on this $90,000 note? I'll pledge my note. I'll do a note assignment. I'll hand the bank the note, and it'll be in their possession until I pay them off. You can't refinance the house anymore because it's not your house. You sold it on payments to Mr. Smith. So only thing you have is a $90,000 note. And so you go pledge the note to the bank, or a bundle of notes to the bank, which is what we do. So that's just so, Nick, so everyone knows what hypothecation means on the call. So with private people, that's why I got involved with taxfreefuture.com. I was teaching so many people how to self-direct their retirement funds, because that's where their wealth was. That's where their cash was. So that they could loan it to me and get out of the stock market, because they're afraid to stay in any longer. Everyone thinks like it's time for the bubble to bust at any minute. And it keeps seeming like that, but it never seems to bust lately. But people say I'd rather have a decent 8 or 9 or 10% or 6%, and have a real piece of tangible collateral known as a house or a piece of real estate, and quit gambling in the stock market. So that's why I started taxfreefuture.com with Tim Berry. Because if I was going to do it, I wanted to feel good about the company that was going to be doing it. And Tim actually will tell you how to get things done. It's not an automatic no with him. A lot of self-directed IRA companies just say no because they don't want to be at risk at anything. And Tim's like, well, you can do it, but you need to do it like this, or this is the risk you run, or he's willing to figure it out.
That's good. So from a private placement perspective, are you seeing more willingness to invest outside of the market as a result of everything that's been happening over the last 6 months,
or
is there more hesitation?
A lot of my private lenders called me. I had like $26 million out when COVID hit, And a lot of them called me. They wanted to know what's going to happen. And I said, well, I don't know what's going to happen any more than you do, but everybody still needs a place to live. And if these one people or a handful of people can't make their payments, then I just have to either work with them and get through it, or if they haven't been a very good payer to begin with, then I'm just going to file for foreclosure when they let me, because right now the courthouses are shut in Texas till January the 1st, or unknown. And so a lot of them called me, and I just had to tell them, we don't have that many people not paying right now. Our collections are about as good as they've ever been, and they were that way all through COVID. So maybe that's because we really did do some due diligence on the people that we decided to put in the houses. And while we were looking for the biggest down payment, we didn't always take the biggest down payment. We took the best down payment with the best person, because we were checking background checks and work history and criminal history and all that. And we really got kind of good at picking really good people. Our community banks, Nick, are still having conversations. They still want to hypothecate our notes. Like we're trying to do a bundle right now for like $2.5 million worth of notes, trying to borrow $2.5 million, and the note totals are like 400 and almost 500,000. So they have $500,000 worth of houses backing up 2.5 that I want to pledge this 2.5 million. These $500,000 worth of notes. All I want is the 2.5 million that I borrowed to buy them. I borrow that money at 8 or 9 or 10%. And the bank's offering me, the community bank's offering me 15 years fixed, no balloon, no adjustments, 6%.
No, that's can't be bad. That's good.
So if I can move twofold does two things, right? And I'm just explaining this. I know you know this backwards and forwards, Nick, but I'm kind of explaining it to the people on the call. I'm trying to replace my 8 and 9 and 10% 2.5 million with a bank's 2.5 million. That's 15-year fixed 6%. I'll get an increase in my cash flow right away, or I might, I might break even, but at least I'm amortizing now, or it's amortizing. And more importantly, I freed up the 2.5 million that my private investors had out with me. Now it's free again. I can go use it again. So it's kind of a way of freeing up my credit line with my private lenders.
That's so that brings me to my second question, which is relative to with sort of to not necessarily raising private capital, but being able to deploy private capital in the with selling of a note, right? So my question is, a lot of investors that want to invest, I should say, that people that have private capital, they're extremely familiar
Let's don't call them investors. Let's call them private lenders, because we'll get the conversation will get
private lenders, private capital, right? So they're very familiar with the rental model, right? So and how cash flow works when they invest $100,000 into a property, and they're going to get cash flow of $300 a month or whatever the number is, and be able to convert that private capital into a long-term cash flowing because of the note. So what I'm trying to understand is that since we're dealing with amortization here, right? Let's just use a $100,000 note at 10%. So if we write a $100,000 note at 10% and it's a 30-year term, okay? And we know that a $100,000 note at 10% is going to produce $10,000 a year in well, it's probably not exactly that. Well, 10% a year is going to produce $10,000. $10,000.
So we made. Let's be clear. Did we?
What's that?
We made this note to our buyer. Is that what is to our buyer or to our lender?
I'm saying let's say I go write a note, seller financing today, and I put up all the cash for $100,000, and I got $100,000 invested, and I wrote the note. I took my cash out of my account, and I wrote a $100,000 note. The property is worth, $120,000, but the rate on the note is 10%. So and I write that and that's amortized. So I'm going to get 10% on that note as long as it's in play. So my question is, does that rate ever change depending on how long you hold the note? Like, does the effective rate change? Like if I have this note for 3 years and then let's just say 3 years from now it gets paid off. Is that effective rate still 10% as if it was to go 30 years, or is it actually?
I say it is because you're still getting 10% on whatever your balance that's in there every month. You know, when you have an amortizing note, the balance goes down every month, so you're making 10% on whatever the balance is remaining in the account. So it's effective all the way to the end of the note.
So it's
when you would get a higher yield. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say. So you think it's because I'm not really understand the cash on cash as much as I do the note side of it. So I'm trying to compare sort of apples to oranges here, but I'm trying to understand is 10% for regardless if you have it for 3 months, 3 years, or the whole term of the note. Does it change at all? Like
the whole term.
At the end of the day, when
it's
you
10%.
know,
It's 10% the whole way through. It's 10% the whole way through the way I see it. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but you know, you have a $100,000 note, then you make a payment, and the payment's based. That's what the whole amortization is. It's based on 10% annual interest in 30 days of it, and then you make a payment, and then the next calculation has to be on 99,900. You know, because when they collected that first payment, $100 dropped off the principal, so the lender got $100 of their principal back, and now they're only collecting interest on 99,900, and I'm going to pay them 10% on that, you know, annual interest. The next payment's figured on the 30 days for that, you know, so it's 10% all the way through, isn't it, Nick?
I think it is too, but it just seemed like since we were dealing with amortization, that since everything is sort of accelerated, I was wondering if that changed. I was just trying to logically think through it since it's front loaded. I didn't know if that actually affected the yield or not, or the return on it or not. Almost like, you know, I was thinking about sort of like when you sort of sell a partial. Like, does that like sort of the same thing?
Well, it's different. See, we're getting two different things. What the private lender wants is a steady rate of return year in, year out, and not have to worry every month, you know, whether the stock market went up or down. They just want to count on a guaranteed 10% annual interest, you know, for whatever the length of the note is they signed. And that's what they get. Now, if you're a note buyer and you buy a $100,000 note for $60,000, then of course you do a lot better if that note gets paid off early. You know, so it's kind of not apples to apples. It's apples and oranges as comparing that.
Got it. Well, I think you answered the question, and that's what I was.
And that's why these people loan it. They want a sure, steady income they can count on, or they're going to get that piece of collateral over there, and they do a lot better if they got my properties. But you know, no one's ever gotten one of my properties. But that, you know, the worst thing will ever happen is I pay them 10% on their money. The best thing will happen is generally that they get my property.
Right. All right. Well, I appreciate that. That helps out a lot.
No problem. Stay with those community banks, man. They're still loaning money. I think what they like about the model is I'm not dealing in wealthy, you know, big time houses. I'm dealing in Walmart houses for Walmart people. And the day that those houses aren't worth anything, then money wasn't worth anything a long time ago. Before that, so you know, there's still people out there that are not afraid. I will say this, when COVID hit...
All right, very good. Well, I appreciate it. Go ahead.
I will say this, when COVID hit, you know, we get payoffs every month, whether we like it or not. We really don't want people to pay our houses off early. We'd rather just collect, you know, at least 15 years in a row and then pay us off, or 20 years. But when we were given the money, when someone paid us off, we had to pay off our private lender and keep the difference. And the private lenders, some of them stopped wanting to reinvest that money. They kind of wanted to hold their powder dry. I mean, one investor went from an exposure of $3.8 million, which was one of my biggest investors. You know, they had $1 million worth of payoffs in the last 3 or 4 months. They said, no, we just want to keep that money in the bank till we see how things are going to wash out. So there was some people backing out, but then there was other people coming to me and saying, this election's coming up. I don't know what's going to happen. The stock market's like just walking a tightrope right now. I mean, that rope could snap any minute, and especially with the election coming down, we want to get some money over to you. So for everybody that wanted to back up, there was also people that wanted to change what they were doing and come on board.
Got it. All right.
All right, man.
Well, I appreciate that.
Anything else?
Always good talking with you.
Nice to talk to you, Nick.
All right. Thanks again, Mitch.
Bye.